Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I am Agi Keramidas and my mission is to inspire you to rise up, grow, stand out and take action towards the next level of your life. I am interviewing leaders, influencers, entrepreneurs, authors, exceptional people who can and will inspire you to improve your life. Tune in for 2 episodes each week, every Monday and Thursday. In today's show, it is my pleasure to speak with Lenny Richardson. Lenny, you graduated from Penn State University in the United States with a bachelor's in criminology. And even though your goal was to attend law school, at the last minute you decided against it. After college, you became a licensed real estate agent in Virginia, and you currently also own a Facebook advertising and marketing agency. You are an avid philosophy enthusiast, a fitness lover, and a learner with an endless level of curiosity. Lenny, welcome to Personal Development Mastery. I'm delighted to speak with you today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Agi. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Lenny, let me start with your journey. So, from criminology and law to marketing and real estate, what's the turning point there? What happened?
It's weird. I feel like in college you kind of jump in, and this is at least true for me. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I know freshman year I kind of got in, and originally I wanted to do biomedical engineering. Sort of thought about how my life would be long term if I stuck through with that career choice. Didn't like it. Switched to psychology, then criminology. Then I thought about law school, all over the place. I think I sort of kind of got into marketing towards the end of college.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I had a website for college students about, it was sort of a self-development type website, but it was also teaching things about finance, how to do better in interviews, just skills I thought college students wanted and needed, but weren't really taught in college. At least I didn't see that being taught in college. So I created a website for that. And that's kind of where the marketing came into play. I sort of had to market it to get more people to come on the website. I did so very unsuccessfully at the time, but that was sort of how that began. And then once I graduated, I kind of decided to not go to law school, just because of, I talked to a bunch of friends and their relatives and people that were lawyers. Oddly enough, like 95% of the people I talked to suggested I not become a lawyer, which was very interesting, but it was very persuasive. So I kind of decided against it, went into real estate. And then for anyone that's not familiar with real estate agents, you're basically everything as a real estate agent. You're the salesman, you're the marketer. In Virginia, we handle our own contracts. So you do the contracts here, you do everything. Until you can get a team at least. So I sort of also had to market myself as a real estate agent, but I started to like it a lot more just because there's sort of that creative aspect that comes into marketing that I don't know, I just like it a lot. So that's a very long way to answer that question, I guess.
No, that's all right. Can you tell me, in terms of your personal development, your self-growth journey, can you give me a key defining moment during that journey?
Yeah. I would say sort of the biggest milestone I had sort of came in college. Basically what happened is, if anyone's not familiar with Penn State and how their campus sort of works, Penn State has what's called satellite campuses. And it's essentially smaller campuses that they have all throughout Pennsylvania. So students can be at Penn State, but not on the main campus. And in the main campus, it's usually where most of the classes are held and where people can graduate. Um, I was at a satellite campus and actually went to a main campus, sort of lost motivation, didn't feel like working, and went through a little bit of depression at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Grades tanked, did awful, and stopped hanging out with people, kind of just isolated myself to my dorm room. And it didn't help at the time. I had my own dorm room by myself. And it was around that time that I watched the video with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and he sort of had an interview with Oprah and talked about how he went through depression after he got kicked from his football team. And it sort of resonated with me because what he said basically summed up the way I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And after watching that, I tried to model his behavior. So I went to the gym more, started waking up earlier. That kind of led me into reading because at the time I hated reading books, which is weird to say now because I love reading now.
Yeah.
But it basically shifted everything and put me more in the mindset of I need to get better. And from that point on, I sort of enjoyed the feeling of constantly improving myself. And so that was sort of the biggest milestone, I would say, that started me off from not developing myself to always wanting to develop myself and encouraging others to develop themselves as well.
I can certainly relate with one of the things you said, which was not feeling like reading, because when I was in university, the last thing I wanted to do is reading, which is a paradox because you're there, you're meant to study, but I suppose it's also at an age in your life that you want to do things, you want to live life rather than study, especially if it is things that you're not interested in reading. Whereas when you find your thing, you enjoy reading, it takes no effort. You just pick up the book and go into it, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, that's it is definitely a weird paradox to have to go to university and you're expected to read, but no one wants to actually read. In a weird way too, it almost feels like this is my personal opinion on this. It's almost sort of a strange conditioning. I feel like some people sort of associate reading with tests and quizzes and maybe stress. So I think it sort of repels people when they hear a book. They're kind of like, oh, books? I have to take a test and a quiz? I don't want to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I think my goal is that I can get more people to sort of understand that reading and all those things, you don't have to associate it with the negative parts that some people might associate it with. There's a lot of good that comes out of it.
And it's very different to learn in order to grow, which is like personal development, and very different to learn to memorize and be tested on the content. Because when you read Tony Robbins or any personal development book, you're not expected to take a test at the end. So you read in the way that suits you the best, and you pick the elements that are relevant to you rather than going through everything and having to learn it by heart or something like that. Lenny, let me ask you, because you mentioned, and I know that it is something that you are passionate about, that concept of constant improvement, that 1% improvement, or Kaizen as it's called. So do you want to talk to me about this, the concept and your take on it?
Yeah, sure. So that's one of the main things. If anyone's ever seen my Instagram page or any YouTube video or anything I've ever put out, I'm sure they'll eventually come across me saying it or writing it because I write and speak about it too much probably. But yeah, so Kaizen is sort of this idea that you want to be constantly improving whatever your craft is, whatever your art is, whatever you're trying to do in life. You want to constantly be improving it. I think a lot of people sort of play a bit of a finite game and they take action with a very specific result in mind. So I feel like for a lot of people, for example, they might work to make enough money to retire, and then in their head, retirement is, I'll sit on the beach with a mojito and enjoy the rest of my days relaxing. And there's nothing wrong with that, I think, but I feel like this is my personal opinion. I think you won't be satisfied by playing a finite game. I think you need to sort of have an infinite game, and always be striving towards something, but at the same time understand that you'll never get it. Like, the bar always gets higher and higher, and that's completely fine. That's what you want. So that's sort of what Kaizen kind of ties into. It's sort of whatever your craft is, you just want to keep getting better at it every day. And I sort of also have a secondary motto that I like to use, just called 1% better. And I feel like nowadays, especially, we sort of compare ourselves to everyone else around us. And we might see someone who, for example, I'm 27 years old. It's easy to go on Instagram now, or Facebook, or any social media website or app, and see another 27-year-old or a 24-year-old even, who is taking pictures with lots of girls or cars, or he's traveling the world, or he's doing whatever. And you sort of feel bad about it because you think, well, I should be where he's at because he's younger than me or the exact same age. And therefore, I must be doing something wrong in my life to not be where he is. And my idea with that is, it really doesn't matter what everyone else is doing as long as you're improving yourself. And for you to improve, you don't have to be improving by leaps and bounds every single day. You know, some people, I've had many people that reached out to me because I read a lot, and they'll say, what do you suggest I do if I want to read more? Because they'll say, you know, I'm trying to read a chapter. I can't read a chapter a day. It's okay. You don't have to read a chapter. You can just read a page. But a page is too hard. That's fine. Just read one paragraph. A paragraph's still too hard. Just read one sentence then. You just get 1% better. You do it a little bit at a time. And then over time, you'll build up the habit. And then one sentence will lead to one paragraph. One paragraph leads to a page. Then one page leads to, you know, a chapter. And there are some people out there who can read a whole book in a single day, but my thing is basically, don't have the expectation that you need to go big in a single setting. You just take it step by step. And part of that also comes down to, don't compare yourself to everyone around you, because you don't really know what work they put into their life. And even if they say they didn't put that much work in, you don't know if they're lying, or you know, what they might consider to not be work might have actually been a lot of work for someone else's standard. It's too difficult to really determine what's actually happening. So instead of thinking about it, don't worry about other people. Focus on constant improvement. Focus on Kaizen and being 1% better.
And that's the thing with small improvement. It is a long-term game. It's not something that you do instantly and have results. But for me, the important thing is to carry on, keep the momentum going, because the more you keep on doing it, and little by little, it's like a snowball effect. Before you know it, it becomes so massive, and all of a sudden, you don't realize what has happened, and the results that you see are massive compared to earlier on. It's like a compounding effect. And you reminded me of that phrase that when you said about to start with the sentence and then go to the paragraph and then to the page. It's like a phrase that says that the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. No one starts by moving the whole mountain. You build up to it. And of course, what you said about comparing, and I actually want to discuss this a little bit more with you. It's I call it comparisonitis. It's the medical term. It's something, especially with social media today. It's very common and very unfortunate. And you said about 27 or 24, but even at early ages, the teenagers today have even more serious issue because you maybe can handle it a little bit better. I certainly can cope with it because when I grew up, we didn't have social media, so that shows my age. But someone who is a teenager and sees others that achieve or look or they perceive that they look better, they have serious psychological issues. So what are your thoughts on the social media situation and comparing? Just go a little bit deeper and tell me what you think.
Yeah. So me personally, this is I don't. I both love and hate social media. I do love the parts of it that allow humans to kind of stay connected with someone. For example, you're in England. I'm in the US. This is amazing that we can connect through the internet, through social media, through podcasting. I actually had a conversation with someone not too long ago. He's in Australia. So at some point, there's probably a good chance I'll plan a trip to Australia to hang out with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the good side of social media. I think the bad side is this. I think for a lot of people, they are always stuck in this. We're always trying to sort of keep up with the Joneses, is the expression, or make ourselves look better to please everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think social media sort of, it takes that emotion, that feeling of comparison, and I think it ramps it up 10 times, if not 100 times. I think for children, it's probably the worst because I think when you're in high school, that's sort of that phase where you really start to kind of, you get a sense of your own value based on everyone else around you.
Yeah.
So maybe you're the guy in school and you see your buddy, he gets his first girlfriend, or maybe you're a female and she gets her boyfriend or her girlfriend or his boyfriend, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you think to yourself, well, I don't have that. Therefore, I'm inadequate or inferior, or there's something wrong with me. And in the past, I think it's bad enough when it's just one school and maybe it's just your core group of friends and you feel bad amongst 5 people or 6 people. Social media, I think, adds a new challenge because the same 14-year-old who maybe 2 decades ago might just compare himself to 5 people,
Mm-hmm.
he's now comparing himself to 500 people or 5,000 people, depending on how deep on social media he is.
Mm-hmm.
And it also hurts when, you might be 14 years old. You might not live in a very wealthy neighborhood, or, you might not have all the social status that you want. And you go on Instagram, for example, and you see some other 14-year-old who, his father's rich, so he has a Lamborghini or something, or he's always showing off the best parts of his life, and it gets in your head. It makes you feel bad about yourself. So yeah, my thing is really, I think people really should just not compare, because it just, like I said, it's too difficult to really know what someone's feeling or what they're thinking. And it's easy to focus on what makes us feel bad, and that sort of distorts reality, I would say. It's easy to see someone who either is rich or is putting on a show to look rich, and you might neglect the fact that this person might not be rich at all. They might just be putting on this whole show for validation from everyone else. They might be in a worse off situation than you, but you'll never know because you're focusing on, what makes you feel bad, and what basically you're focusing on them posturing for everyone else. So yeah, that's sort of why I hate and love social media. It has sort of it's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely, yeah. You can be injured severely if you don't use it carefully. Lenny, let's talk about something else. It's something that you said that you would like to talk about, and that was the topic of eudaimonia, which I told you when you mentioned that to me, because I told you that because I am Greek, it put me on the spot, because it is a concept that I should know well, because it's an old concept by Aristotle in ancient Greece. And to be honest, it was a concept that I was not very much familiar with. So you gave me some incentive to do some studying and brush up my ancient Greek philosophy and things like that. So, do you want to explain, first of all, what draws you into that concept, and anything else that you want to discuss about it?
Sure, sure. So I sort of stumbled upon the concept of eudaimonia in college, kind of when I was going through, I'll call it my bout of depression. Once I sort of tried to make myself better and improve myself, I spent a lot of time at the library. Actually, so just to kind of give a little bit more background, it was a very it was a very rough 2 years at this point in my life. I went through depression a little bit when it was my junior year of college, transferred to main campus. Went through a bit of depression just because my belief is that I didn't have any goals, and that's what led to the depression. There was really nothing I was working for. Started to read more and exercise, got kicked out of college, which was, that didn't help the depression. Sort of got kicked out, but decided to live on campus for the most part. I lived in an apartment off campus, but still basically in the town where the university is. I didn't go back home. And just worked a lot of odd jobs at that point. Like Walmart, movie theater, gas station, just to pay rent.
Yeah.
And when I wasn't working, I went to the library and just studied. And that was because I couldn't go to college. Couldn't take classes. But part of it at the time was I didn't have money, and I figured, how do I make money? How do I improve myself more? Went to the library. I don't really know how I got into it, but started getting deeper into philosophy. I think just because philosophy kind of taught me to question things. And for whatever reason, just questioning everything, it helped me think a lot more. It just resonated with me. So I couldn't tell you which book or which books kind of brought eudaimonia up, but eventually stumbled upon eudaimonia, and it clicked with me because at the time I was trying to improve myself, and eudaimonia was this concept of, I've seen different translations of it, but like flourishing, the good life, a fulfilling life. And so basically in eudaimonia, for anyone listening that's not familiar with it, it's broken down into health, wealth, and I think it's sometimes 4 that I see, but basically health, wealth, and relationships. And sometimes there's a 4th one that kind of gets thrown on, and it's happiness. And as I read more about it, that made sense to me. And I sort of looked around, and the people that I felt weren't fulfilled were either missing one of these things or all these things or a combination of these 3 things. And so that sort of became my model for myself. And then once I followed it, I realized that I became a lot happier following those 3 things. But I also felt that it was one of those messages that a lot of us don't get in the modern age. And conceptually, it's very simple. Be healthy, have some money. You don't want to be poor, because if you live in poverty, that usually makes you unhappy. And have good relationships. It sounds very simple, but I think most people do not follow it. So that's been sort of the thing that I try to, I don't want to say teach, because that makes me sound too much like a teacher or like an expert. I wouldn't call myself that. I'm still learning it myself. But it's something I try to spread to kind of make people aware of. And I would say for anyone listening too, I don't think in philosophy books they really order them. I personally believe they should be ordered, at least in the modern day. I would probably order them. First step, make a little bit of money. You don't have to be rich. I think, like I said, people compare themselves. You don't need to be rich. I think to some extent from what I've heard, being rich might actually make people a lot worse off than better off. But it does help to have enough money to sustain yourself. So I would say finances, wealth is the first step. Health is the second step. If you're not healthy, you're probably not able to be happy. If you have money like Richard Branson or Steve Jobs or whoever, but you have, say, cancer and you only have a few days to live, you're probably not going to be as fulfilled as you could be. And cancer is a very extreme example, but the point being that you need to have some health to live a very sustainable, fulfilling lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one I would say would be relationships. Once you kind of have the health built up, once you have your finances built up, you need the relationships. And I think a lot of people with relationships, I always try to make this clear. I think this is just my take on it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think of relationships as sexual relationships. I need to have a boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever. I interpret it more as you should have personal relationships with people that you enjoy being around, which includes a spouse, but it also includes friends, because you don't want to isolate yourself from friends and just be around your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't also want to just be that person who only has, platonic friendships, but maybe no romantic relationships. I think you need a balance of all those things.
Sure.
That was very long-winded, but
I would say that as the human connection in general. Yeah, relationships is the human connections you made. The only thing I would maybe change in the order that you put, for me anyway, is health would be on first by far rather than that, because there is that phrase that say that a healthy person can have 1,000 wishes. A sick person has only one. So it's just it's certainly for me the base of the pyramid, where everything else can be built of. And I'll also add, you said about eudaimonia, the best English translation I've seen was human flourishing.
Flourishing.
So it's difficult to translate it exactly, but if you think of it as flourishing of the human, I think it's a very great description of what it might entail to flourish in all aspects of your life. I think that's. So how do you suggest someone goes about to flourish as a human? Then? What steps can someone do to improve health, wealth, and relationships?
Starting with health, I think the simplest thing, eat better. I know this sounds, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think another one of those things, I think conceptually it's not too difficult. Basically, eat better. Try not to eat too, processed foods, sugar.
100%.
As hard as it is, try to stay away from alcohol and things like that. And be more active. I would say those are probably the first steps right there alone. I think people overcomplicate the health part. Sometimes people think to be healthy, I need to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's like, you do not need to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. That is its own separate category of health. Some might even argue that being that size isn't even that healthy. But for the average human being, we live a very sedentary lifestyle nowadays. We're always sitting around. A lot of us have jobs at an office, or even if we work from home, we're at our desk all day, hunched over. Just standing up more, walking around, being out in the sunlight where there's vitamin D, to me is really all you kind of need to be healthier. Stretching more. Yoga is becoming popular. I think yoga is fantastic. Things like that, I think, are the main steps for health. It doesn't need to be extreme. You don't need to be the person that runs a marathon every weekend. Those are great. That's fantastic if you can. But for the average human being, just moving around more, not being sedentary too much, getting out in the sun, having a cleaner diet, and even exercising at least 10 to 20 minutes a day is really all you need, I would say. You don't need to be a gym rat, lifting weights for an hour every single day. So for health, I would say that's a good start. As far as finances, and I try to be careful because I'm not a financial planner or anything like that, but very basic stuff. Just don't live outside your means. I know it sounds, again, very simple, but
It's common
a lot of,
sense, Lenny, but it's not common practice. Both the
yes,
health and this, yeah, many people live outside their means. So
yes,
everyone knows that you should save, and but how many people actually do it?
yes, yeah. I think part of it too. I think a big reason why a lot of people don't save. I think it goes back to the whole comparison. We're comparing ourselves to other people. So there's actually there's a book I read a while back. I think it's The Millionaire Next Door, and in the book they talk about the author talks about, I think, doctors and lawyers and I think engineers, even as their salary increases, their expenditures increase to match their salary, because they're keeping up with everyone else that are, their friends that are also doctors and lawyers that are also upgrading their lifestyle. So it becomes this never-ending cycle of, I make more money, I spend more money, but I never actually get to keep more money because I'm always trying to buy the car that matches my neighbors. I'm buying the Mercedes to beat my neighbor's Mercedes, so it becomes a never-ending cycle. But I would say, if you kind of move away from the comparison, it becomes a lot simpler. In my life, the way I practice it sounds very strange. I am a very basic clothing shopper. For a lot of people, clothing is a lot of money. I literally go to like Target and Walmart and buy $5 shirts, a pack of $5 shirts, and very cheap jeans. I know that for some people listening, that might sound very weird, but it saves a lot of money. Not eating fast food it saves a lot of money. You can eat out. I know people who eat out every single day, and you spend if you eat out for one meal, $10 a day, you do that 5 days a week, you've spent $50. $50 could have easily been reinvested into, not to get too deep into the finances, but a Roth IRA or an investment account. So on the finance side, maybe people listening, don't compare yourself too much. Don't really worry about what your neighbor has compared to what you have. Save money. I think Richest Man in Babylon, very simple rule: take 10% of what you earn, stash it away. I think, if anything, that's probably one of the best things anyone can do to keep it very simple.
Yeah.
And as far as relationships, I'm sorry.
No, carry on.
I was going to say, as far as relationships, make more of an effort to be around people. I think, at least what I kind of see, a lot of people now, at least this is more so my age group. I can't speak for other age groups, but what I see a lot is people don't want to make that first move. And, they don't want to reach out and say, hey, do you want to go to this event with me? Do you want to do this with me? They don't really want to make a plan to reach out to their friends or make new friends. And so I would say that's probably, if you have a social circle, even if they're acquaintances, don't be afraid to kind of reach out to someone you met randomly at some point and say, hey, you were a cool person. Let's go hang out somewhere. It doesn't have to be the bar. It could be, but it could just be a random, let's go walk somewhere and just talk about stuff. I think that works just as well. I think a lot of people nowadays, especially nowadays, are kind of craving that interaction with each other. So yeah, I think people can keep it simple. Just ask people to hang out. If you're out somewhere in public, don't be afraid to talk to the stranger next to you. In my experience, they won't bite. They're not. Most people are pretty nice. Most people are pretty nice, and they'll accept you for who you are. At least in my experience.
Absolutely, yeah. And if they don't, then it's okay. You can always move on. I mean, no one will like you, but that's not really the point. If you try to please everyone, you end up really pleasing no one and displeasing yourself and who you truly are. So this was really, I think, solid, simple advice for, and I'm certain that many people who listen to this will say, "Oh, yeah, I know about that. I've heard about that, but I don't do it." So it's great always to reinforce the message. And I was noting earlier, you mentioned the richest man in Babylon. That little book, I think, is for me one of the best, if not the best, simple little book about how to manage finances and wealth. It's a very small book, but it has all the principles that I think everyone who has became wealthy has used, and it's dated like thousands of years ago. Lenny, I would like to ask you also some quick fire questions to finish up with this podcast. So, first of all, tell me, what does the term personal development mean to you?
I would say, to me, personal development is just constantly improving yourself, always getting better than who you were the day before.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be the most general way I would say I would define it.
Sure.
And
it's a deeper layer to that?
I would say you want to develop yourself in full. So you want to develop yourself mentally and physically. I would say is kind of something I would add on to it. So read more, try to learn more from other people and from other sources. Mm-hmm. Stay healthy, stay active. Don't become too sedentary in the modern day.
Awesome. And let's say you could go back in time and meet your 18 or 17-year-old self. What's the one piece of advice you'd give him?
That is a great question. I would say if I could go back and meet my 17 or 18-year-old self, get out of your comfort zone, I would say would be a big one. Mm-hmm. When I was 17 and 18, up until really around when I was 20, I stayed very deep in the comfort zone. In anything that slightly seemed like a challenge, I would not do. Mm. I feel like our brains kind of put up a barrier. Anything that seems unfamiliar, it sort of persuades us to not do it. It shows us all the reasons why we might fail without kind of giving us insight into the benefits. So you might want to be the person that goes to the gym. Oh, well, the bar might fall on you. It's too heavy. You'll look foolish. You'll look dumb. It's like those things could happen. The reality is that no one cares. No one's paying attention, and you can get healthier and you can feel better. There could be an event, you might in your head say, I want to go to that event, but it seems uncomfortable. It's too far. It's too expensive. People might judge me. It could be a scam. It could be a waste of time and money. Like it could be true, but it could also be the best experience ever. It could also be life-changing. It could also be a rewarding experience that makes you a better person, which is the upside is way better than any of the downsides. So yeah, I would say if I could go back in time, I would definitely urge my 17, 18, 19-year-old self, get out of the comfort zone, take more risks, not worry so much about what everyone else is thinking, because I think the reality is that they're not really thinking about you that
no,
much.
They have their own things to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, they're concerned about themselves, not so much about
absolutely,
me. So.
Absolutely. And tell me one more thing. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and change something in the world as the world is today, what would you change?
That is a great question. Oh, man. The first thing that comes to mind, honestly, is to get rid of social media. I think that would. I for all the benefits that it has, I think the way we utilize it, I think is more negative. And maybe I could be wrong. Maybe it has a more positive impact. But just from my general observation, I feel like there's a few people that use it very positively. There's a lot of people that use it. Their consumption of it is very negative. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So I would probably remove it. You know, if I had a magic wand, I would get rid of it. I would say sorry to the people that are using it positively. And say, you know, it's for the greater good. Other people are kind of, you know, it's better off. We're better off without it, I think.
There is a documentary. I don't know if you've watched it yet. It's called Social Dilemma.
I just saw that a few days ago.
Yes, you watched it?
Yes.
Yeah, it really gives some insights on what social media has become, because it didn't start like that, but now it's scary what's going on. Lenny, how can people connect with you and find out more about you?
I would say for now, the easiest way is through Instagram. And my username is very difficult for a lot of people to spell and pronounce, so I'll spell it out.
I'll put it in the show notes. Yes, it is. We were talking about that earlier before we started recording.
Yes. Okay. But for anyone listening, it's Leviticus Rich. And it'll be in the show notes, I guess. But
I'll put it there.
Okay, all right. But yeah, it's always hard for people to pronounce and spell. So maybe not the best username on my part.
It is unique for sure. So maybe if you used your something that was more common, you never know. These things, the fact that it is unique might give you an advantage that you've never thought about yet anyway.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, Lenny, for our conversation, and it's been very interesting, your thoughts on the becoming better and those simple yet not commonly practiced things on improving ourselves. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the very best with all your endeavors. Any parting words?
Nothing comes to mind besides just, if you're listening, just keep improving, keep trying to become a better person, and understand that there's no finish line to that goal. It's an infinite game.
Thank you for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe and review Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts, and also share this podcast with someone who you think will benefit from it. If you want to gain access to exclusive content while supporting this podcast, then become my patron. The link is in the show notes, or you can type bit.ly/pdmpad. If you want to know more about what I do and how I can help you, or if you have any questions, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. Again, the link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/pdmgroup. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.